What aspects of gender would you like to see in the international framework?
I'll just focus on the financing because that's the issue among all the issues in the climate change talks. In financing, Gendercc is really lobbying that first that there be gender balance, that there be gender integration in the governance of the funds and in the allocation of the funds itself. So when it comes to the governance, it would be good if the board, they call the governance body as the board at this time, but I don't know if the name would change afterwards, that they would like to have more women in the board. It doesn't automatically mean that having more women means being gender sensitive, but then we think that it is a step towards the right direction. And then another is on the allocation of the funds, that we would like that the projects where these funds would be allocated are very gender sensitive. So we are thinking of certain criteria. Examples of those criteria are that the projects would not involve risky technologies, usually high-tech technologies. I don't know if you've already encountered the term geoengineering. And for women, we've already done some studies in the past. They're saying that they don't like it. So that there's a gender preference in terms of the choice of technologies, mainly because it's risky. And what is also striking in the studies is that the more women know about these technologies, the more that they wouldn't prefer it, which is quite different from men. Sometimes the more they know, the more they get excited about it. And then another is also on mass public infrastructure. And it's also important to point out that the mass public infrastructure, for instance, public transportation, water, these are non-revenue generating projects. And in terms of financing, these are actually, we can say that these are actually social protection projects. So governments cannot really earn money from it. That is why we are also saying that the money that has to be put into the fund should not be loans. It should be public money. It should be grant-based. It should be predictable and adequate. So those are the in the larger picture. That's what we want in the fund.
You said that women inherently have a caution about geoengineering and other hard technology solutions. What kinds of mitigation solutions, if any, did women prefer?
Based on the study that was conducted, this was a study on industrialized countries actually. Women are more into lifestyle changes rather than investing in technologies that are very high-tech, that are very unpredictable in the long term. So that is their solution. That's why as I've said earlier, in terms of climate change, women are really more vulnerable than men. But women are actually part of the solution in terms of addressing the climate crisis that we have at the moment.
So you've given us a nice picture of the international framework and some of the concerns you have from a gender perspective. Speaking now about national policies and programs, we know that many governments, including developing country governments, are putting in place climate change strategies and starting to actually implement programs and measures to support those. Are there any best practices of incorporating gender into climate and development programs, or are there any obvious gaps where you think gender could and should be incorporated?
Right now, we still couldn't find an example of a national policy where gender is integrated well. In fact, partly because many governments are still at the stage where they are setting up these policies, but also because of the tradition where gender is not really made an issue, or if ever it is integrated, it's only on paper, or even if it is on paper, the mechanisms are not really very clear on how gender could be mainstreamed in practice.
So it sounds like there's a long way to go, Nina.
Yeah.
Are governments here in Cancun at the climate talks, are they listening to your message? Are you getting through?
Well, they're listening to us, but listening is one thing, but inserting the language or writing the language is another. Because right now, they're really prioritizing on financing, for instance. And if you read the LCA text on especially the section on financing, you wouldn't see any gender, the word gender or the word woman there. But there are governments which have been supportive of our proposed language, and one of these governments is Iceland and also Finland. In fact, what Finland did was very interesting, because what they did was to put some more money so that more women could join the delegations of the government. So they supported a lot of African women so that they could be really immersed into the negotiations, be involved in it. And from what I've got, the feedback and the impact is really good. Of course, we cannot say that the language is already there, but the process of for the women themselves and the impact of having the presence of these women in the negotiating groups is really good, and I think it should be continued in the next years to come.